Big news in the weather industry happening right here in State College. And no, I'm not talking about Winter Storm Thor. WHVL's For the Record starts right now.
Commonwealth's attorneys and I have concluded that the NCAA sanctions were overreaching and unlawful.
Someone's got to develop a product that you and I, as a consumer, are going to want to buy.
The country needs a comprehensive energy plan.
Good morning and welcome to this edition of For the Record. Finally, some warm temperatures beginning to work their way into central Pennsylvania, and for that we bring in expert senior meteorologist from AccuWeather, Bernie Rayno. Bernie, thank you so much for being here.
No, it's my pleasure. Anytime I can get on TV, that's a good thing, right?
So congratulations, AccuWeather, doing big things from right here in State College.
Yeah, we launched the AccuWeather network on Verizon Fios, and we continue to evolve the channel, and we're hoping that as we move forward, you're going to see us on more cable companies and other different kind of offerings. So we're very excited about it, and again, we're going to be improving things as we move forward.
Now those talks started about a year ago. What was the process like? Obviously, it just didn't come out of thin air.
Well, it was something that AccuWeather we've been looking at for several years, but you have to get in on the right time. And about a year ago, we just decided to make the commitment to launching the channel. Of course, you have to have a channel on a cable company for it to become a reality, and thankfully that occurred in the last week or so with the launch of the network on Verizon Fios.
Now, the Verizon representatives, they seem very happy with their decision to go with you guys. What has been their reception as you guys were leading up, say, the last month to get this on air?
Well, they were very excited about the opportunity as we were at AccuWeather. And what the channel's going to be is all weather all the time. Our goal is that when you turn on that channel, you can get all of the weather information that you need, and our presentations are going to be energetic. And we're also going to make sure that when you watch the forecast, you know how to prepare your day. Whether you're heading to work, whether you have to leave early, leave later, or if you're taking a flight somewhere to the West Coast, East Coast, we want to make sure that the weather prepares you for your daily activities. And we're also going to have what we call a little geeky side of the weather, where we're going to try to explain to viewers, hey, this is what we're looking at. This is why we're coming up with the forecast. So hopefully people understand how difficult it is to actually forecast the weather on a day-by-day basis. But we want to give people the behind the scenes so they understand what we're all about.
I don't think people would be shocked to see your energy out on TV with the energy you're bringing here today. The MinuteCast and the 45-day forecast, those are two things that are exclusive to AccuWeather. The MinuteCast, that's something that I like to use because it is what it is. It's a MinuteCast telling you what the day is. How difficult is that for a meteorologist to predict that right down to the minute?
Well, you know, it's so hard to just try to do it without any kind of help. Of course, we have computer models that help us. So the MinuteCast, it's kind of a myriad of computer models and a meteorologist experience to try to craft that by minute. Now, it's constantly being updated. It's updated every 5 minutes, so it is something that also changes. But it's another way to give people the understanding of how the weather is going to affect their day. Now, the 45-day forecast, this is an exclusive product to AccuWeather. And, you know, it wasn't too long ago, back in the 70s and even in the 80s, where AccuWeather came up with the 5-day forecast. That was unheard of back in those days. How can you do that? And then we went to the 7-day. How can you do that? So now we're pushing the envelope to the 45-day forecast. And, you know, it's a product that, again, it's continuing to evolve. We're going to continue to improve it. Because I do think, as you go forward into this field, long-range forecasting is going to become more important. We're going to get better at it, and then we're going to push the envelope even further to try to get more accurate forecasts out months or even a year. But if you don't try, you're never going to get better.
And there are some critics, you know, from your competitors about that 45-day forecast,
Sure.
but like you said, it's about moving the product forward. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was you guys have acquired hazardous notifications. It's a company in Oklahoma that's about making weather simpler for people like me who don't necessarily understand it at home, that they could actually plan their days out even easier.
It's been amazing to watch the transformation over the last decade. You have to understand, when I grew up in the 70s and even in the 80s, there was no internet. Now with the internet and how fast it is, the general public can actually view all of the weather products and all of the computer models that meteorologists use to make a daily forecast. And there's no question that there's a large population in this country that love the weather. They've always wanted to be a meteorologist, but either they found it late in life, or perhaps they couldn't get through the rigors of the math and the physics that goes into acquiring that field. So now it gives them an outlet to be able to make their own forecasts. Now, that's a good thing and a bad thing sometimes, because now you have all these forecasts out on Twitter and Facebook that you have to make sure we're not confusing the public. But I think that it's an area where people will find a lot of interest in. And if anything, you're just bringing more people into the field of meteorology, whether they're just an enthusiast, or perhaps it's that high school senior or that child that's growing up that all of a sudden finds these products. They develop a passion and then they get into the field of meteorology. Meteorologists, most of us, we don't stumble upon this field. We're born into it. So a lot of meteorologists have wanted to do this since they were 5 or 6 years old, like myself. So I think this is an outlet for them to pursue it perhaps a little earlier, until what I had to do, wait to college before you learn all of this stuff.
Mobile data and wearables, that's something where the field is going. 9.5 billion data hits a day for AccuWeather. You guys are one of the leaders in that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that the way in which people acquire weather has changed. It's no longer just from the television or the newspaper. It's going to be on your phones. It's interesting, when you go to colleges, or even if you go to high school, you ask people, how many of you watch the local news? You won't see one hand. How many of you already have a phone and access your data on your phone? Or how many of you don't even turn on the television anymore? You turn on the computer. That's where this field is going, and that's where our company is also going. Now, we're going to continue to work on those other forms of media, radio, television, newspaper. But as we go forward, more and more people will be accessing information on their computers and on their cell phones. And now with the cell phone, that opens up a whole different market, because it's outside of the United States. It's international. AccuWeather is the leading provider of weather information internationally. So it opens up a brand new audience for the AccuWeather brand.
I'm one of those mobile weather type guys, and we'll get into the reality of TV weather. Back with more on For the Record right after this. Welcome back to For the Record. We're talking to weather expert senior meteorologist Bernie Rayno from AccuWeather. And Bernie, reality television with the weather, Verizon has actually kind of cited that's why they switched to AccuWeather away from the Weather Channel with your new network, reality TV weather. Do you feel like this kind of started when Al Roker made the switch to the Weather Channel and maybe it got networkized?
Well, you know, I can't really, I don't know the reason why Weather Channel has gone to that different kind of format. But obviously, I think part of it has to be that the amount of people watching TV is far less anymore. It's expensive to run a 24/7 network, and it could have been a cost-cutting move. You know, it's kind of interesting when you think of what happened in the 80s. MTV, remember MTV? It was all videos all the time. Well, they went to the reality television as well. So you've seen it in other stations doing the same thing.
Yes, I am still old enough to remember that MTV used to show actually music videos. In the future, how does AccuWeather plan to do the naming of storms going forward, because that's one thing we see: Snowmageddon, snow apocalypse, and Winter Storm Thor. I didn't see any Norse god hammers coming down out of the sky for this last one.
Well, we are not going to be naming storms. We, as a company, do not feel as if it adds anything to the meteorological community. I think the naming of storms is more of an advertising and social media part of it. But at this point, we're going to shy away from that. You know, when everybody is competing against each other, and you're always trying to get a leg up on your competition, but there's a line. I drew it on the table, but there's a line, and you have to be careful. You want to make sure that you get your message out, and certainly social media is a big part of that, but there's a line you can't cross. So you're always straddling that line, but if you cross the line, in the end, it'll come back to hurt you.
Do you think maybe the naming of the winter storms and naming of storms in general, is it kind of a scare tactic? I don't want to say that maybe someone thought of in a back room that maybe people will pay more attention to us and heed our warnings more if we could actually put a name with an event instead of maybe just a number or just a simple term, nor'easter.
Well, I think that certainly could be part of it. I mean, it's important. In this day and age, you would think, with all the weather we have and all the watches and warnings, and let me tell you something, the United States has the best weather enterprise in the world. We are the envy of other countries because we have academia, we have the best government National Weather Service, we have private companies such as AccuWeather and many others, but yet people still do not heed watches and warnings. You hear that all the time. So this may have been a way to get more attention so people can listen and heed the warnings, and lives will be saved. There's no question about that.
Is that the most frustrating part of a meteorologist's job, where maybe people don't heed the warnings and they go out on the roads in bad weather, or they don't evacuate a certain area, and you say, well, if you listen to us, maybe things would be different? Is that frustrating for you guys?
There's a reason I don't have much hair left on my head. Yeah. Look at what happened in Atlanta. Remember, the whole city was shut down by 2 inches of snow. You know what the forecast called for in Atlanta that day by not only the Weather Service, AccuWeather, and other outlets? 1 to 3 inches of snow. And it still caused all these problems. And that's why, as a meteorological community, we've then realized that issuing an accurate forecast isn't good enough anymore. We've got to take it beyond that and really focus on the impacts. And again, that's what our motto is for the AccuWeather networks. It's not just a superior, accurate forecast, but the forecasts are going to have context so you can take that information and plan your day.
I remember the photo of Atlanta very vividly. I wasn't sure if I was looking at a screenshot from The Walking Dead or if that was an actual picture of that day from the city of Atlanta. Shifting over to the tropical season with hurricanes. Hurricane Andrew, a big 1992 storm across Miami-Dade County. How close do meteorologists work with, say, county planners in terms of developing those coastal areas to maybe limit the damage that we saw from storms like Superstorm Sandy, storms like Camille, storms like Hugo, and things like that?
Well, that is more of a function, and then we go back to the weather enterprise, is that we all have our different roles. That is the role of the National Weather Service, to be working with those emergency managers. The private sector, what we do is we take the watches and warnings issued by the National Weather Service and we disseminate the information. Academia is the research leg of our three-legged stool, so to speak. They do all the research to make sure that we have the best product. So all of those three legs working together to provide the best weather that we can in this country.
How important is it for, you're an in front of the camera guy, you're one of the talent guys, to be able for you to decipher all that information and get that to the know-nothing person about weather and try to convince that person that he needs to listen to you? That's
our daily job. And I can tell you, one of the things that I'll never forget is when I was on Good Morning America the morning before Sandy hit. And having to stand there and talk with Sam Champion and discuss the impacts that were coming with Sandy. I talked about a devastating and a life-threatening storm that would change the coast forever. At the end of that, all of that, when I was done, I actually had to sit down because I was a little shaken by what I was thinking or what I just said. If I'm wrong, my credibility is gone. But if I'm right, people are going to probably lose their life. So you could see what I was wrestling with. Now, fortunately, I was correct, but unfortunately, I was correct.
That is powerful. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't comprehend that if I had to do that in my daily job, that I would have somebody's life in our hands. And when we come back, we are going to talk about global warming, climate change, whatever people are.
Breath. Okay.
It's an infuriating topic on both sides of the aisle. It's become very politicized. We're going to try to get into it a little bit. Stay with us. You're watching WHVL's For the Record. Welcome back to For the Record. We're about to talk climate change with expert senior meteorologist from AccuWeather, Bernie Rayno. And Bernie, it's a hot topic, not only in politics, it's a hot topic if you're just walking down the street between two people having a casual conversation. What is it? Is it global warming? Is it climate change? What's the hip-hop new name for it right now?
The change, the name does seem to change quite a bit. Unfortunately, I think it fits the weather that's occurring in a certain location for a certain time. It used to be global warming, then it was climate change, now it's climate disruption. It is a very difficult subject to have a conversation on without the two sides wanting to probably hit each other after that conversation. It has been politicized, which means it has been contaminated quite a bit.
I mean, when politics gets involved, I have trouble, trusting everything the government's doing in the first place. Does that just throw the whole argument on, no matter what side of it you're on, out the window? Because just say you believed in it or didn't believe in it, and I said, well, what was your political party or how did you vote? And somebody goes, well, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. It's like, well, I can't believe anything you're saying.
When I tell people that I am a skeptic, the first thing that I hear is that I'm being paid by the oil companies. Trust me, I don't have a yacht in the Caribbean and I don't have a second house in South Beach. But that's the way it has become now. If you believe in either a skeptic or you're not a skeptic, you automatically get labeled as in the pocket of somebody. Now, let's remember, this is a business. There is lots of money being floated around on both sides, although most of the government funding is going to the side of that we are destroying our climate because of CO2.
You mentioned that you were a skeptic. There's people on the extreme parts of both sides that no matter what happens, where it's an extremely dry day in the summer, it's climate change. Big snowfall in Boston, it's a climate change. I'm of one that I was going to apply for the post office job down in Antarctica for Great Britain, but I thought, oh man, we're having a cold winter. I don't want to do this. So.
Well, my stance on climate change is simple. Does CO2 have an effect? Absolutely. Listen, we've been changing the climate of our planet for the second we put our foot on this earth. Anytime we build buildings, it disrupts the temperatures in a local area. My stance is pretty simple. The CO2 affect the atmosphere, of course, but what's the sensitivity? Is it a half a degree? Is it a degree and a half? Is it 2 degrees? I don't know, but I don't think anybody else does either. I think it's arrogant to believe that we know the exact answer, and I think it's even more arrogant to believe that we can project the energy budget for the entire Earth out decades. No, we can't.
Mention it being contaminated. I mean, you have scientists that are spending years of their life, millions of dollars in remote places on the globe, that maybe they thought something was going to happen. Is it possible that maybe numbers are being forged on both sides of the argument, much like in the media field? If I spent years investigating something and it wasn't something that I wanted to hear, I might be tempted, not myself, but members of my field might be tempted to say, you know what, I just spent so many years of my life. This has to be true.
Well, do I think that's happened? I don't know. But numbers can be manipulated in any way that you want them. There's so much information on this. We have the land-based temperatures that show warming, but yet we have satellite instrumentations that do not show the same kind of warming. that we're seeing on the land. The IPCC had mentioned in one of the reports that most of the warming has occurred at night. Why is that? Because we're building things around thermometers. Now, does that mean that the climate change argument is, no, see, no. But there's problem with information on both sides. I think it's going to be an issue that is not going to be resolved because you can't just look at the weather for 1 year in one spot. That's not the way it works. You have to look at the global temperatures out decades before you can make that answer. But let's remember, there has been times on the history of this planet where the CO2 has been higher, where it's been warmer, where it's been colder, and that's why the climate change name doesn't make sense. Because the climate's been changing since the dawning of time, and it's going to continue to change.
Talking about this winter specifically, the Great Lakes, three of them covered in ice. Niagara Falls, frozen. You know, I can't remember the last time I saw it frozen. I think maybe it was last year, but before that, I don't remember seeing it at least that often. I mean, how cool is that just as a meteorologist to see some of those things take place?
Oh, it's been an amazing winter. But, you know, everybody in the East needs to understand while it's been cold, you get to the western United States, it's been warm. It's been warm up in Alaska. Why? Because all their air is down into the east. So, and that's how everything works. It's everybody, the whole pattern is related. If you're cold somewhere, you're going to be hot in another place. I'm done with winter. It's not cool anymore. I want to get to spring.
I think we're all done with winter. The Great Lakes covered with ice, that should, if I'm correct, should moderate some of the severe weather come springtime for this part of the country. Am I correct?
Well, you can't get severe weather until it gets warm. And over the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen record low severe weather. That's why when people say the weather's more extreme now than it has been, actually, compared to what happened in the 1930s, I think the weather is pretty benign across the United States. But until you get the warmth established, you're not going to have any severe weather. We've had very little severe weather so far this year. We're already at record lows, and March is off to a slow start.
Bernie, thank you so much for being here. I could speak for everybody. I know myself, I'm ready for some golf weather. I want to get out there on the links here in central Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
He's a great guest. We always look forward to having great guests on For the Record. Tune in next week for another great show. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy your Sunday.